Hey there! This is not Stephen Brown, this is Dan from FBGeeks.com. You know, I invited Stephen to join us today. I invited him over for a little bit of tea and some ink, a little bit of nibs, but he said, Dan, your American tea just sucks, and he promptly hung up the Skype call. So I'm going to be doing this on my own today. And today we're going to be doing an Inkcyclopedia of Organic Studio Carbon Black. But before we get into that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the pens I'm going to be using because they are different from what Steven is using. I do have the 6mm Pilot Parallel. I'm also going to be using the 1.5mm Pilot Parallel. And then for my bold nib, I'm going to be using a Edison Pen Company Extended Huron. I hope that's right. Sorry, Brian. The bold nib in this is pretty wet, and it's a very smooth rider. I really like it. And moving on to the medium nib, I'm going to use this Pelican M200 in anthracite. This is the first nib, well, one of the first that I ground into a stub. It's about a 0.9mm stub nib, and I really like it because if an ink shades at all, this pen is going to bring it out. And moving on to the fine nib, I'm going to use a TWSBI Micarta. Now this pen was tuned by Mike Masuyama at the Chicago Pen Show, I believe. But anyways, it gives a very fine line, it's borderline extra fine, and it's just one of my favorite pens. And then for a little flex, I'm going to be using a vintage Parker Vacuumatic. And these are not known for their flex capabilities, but man, this pen is one of the best I've ever used. So without further ado, let's get into the ink. I was able to get one of the special limited edition 110 milliliter bottles, and they're all hand numbered. Really good looking inks. The colors are fantastic. This carbon black, at first I was expecting a really black, but that doesn't really make sense if you think about the name carbon black. What do we know that's carbon? Well, how about charcoal? I mean, there's a lot of carbon there. If you were to write with a piece of charcoal, that's basically what you'd get with this ink. It's kind of just a really dark gray charcoal color, and not so much of that black that a lot of people are looking for. But that's not a bad thing. This ink actually exhibits really good shading. The whiter the nib, the better it's going to show up, and we'll definitely see that in the examples. Overall, it's just a really smooth, good flowing ink. It doesn't feather on quality paper. Now paper is going to make the real difference there. I noticed on copy paper, it did feather. On Rhodia and even Moleskin, there was no feathering there, so that's always good. It does have a little bit of bleed through. Here you can see on the copy paper a little bit of bleed through, and even on my Rhodia samples, in the heaviest spots there was some bleed through. Now it's not too bad. I don't know if I'd call it a problem, but it's definitely there. So if you like using two sides of the same sheet, it might be a little bit of a problem. So other than that, it behaved itself very well. I didn't notice any problems with drying out if you leave it uncapped for a little bit. There was no clogging or anything like that. I mean, it's actually just a really good ink. Alright, so we've got our paper, we've got our ink, and we've got our pens. I'll start with the 6mm Pilot Parallel so you can get a good idea of the color. So if you can't tell, that's supposed to be the letter C. forgive the crudeness, it's been a while since I've done this. But we'll move on to the 1.5 millimeter parallel. Fill this in just a little bit. We'll go ahead and add the atomic mass. The atomic number, 6. Just put that up here. It's not too bad. Move back to the 6 millimeter. Just add a little frame to this. Wow, I really need to lay off the caffeine. Yeah, so not too bad. And we'll go ahead and do a couple lines just to show off the color and do repeat strokes to see how it darkens. This is Rhodia blank paper, by the way. So we'll just go ahead and let these dry, and then I'll do a second pass and a third pass over those. And while that dries, we'll go ahead and start with the TWSBI micarta and do a sample with the fine nib. See if these are dry yet. Yeah, it is dry. So go ahead and do a second pass. Let that dry, and I'll come back and do a third pass over this one. So I suppose I should probably label those, huh? now we will use the Pelican M200 with the medium stub nib. We'll go ahead and move on to the Edison with the wet broad nib. This should turn out quite a bit blacker than the previous samples. And then we'll go ahead on do the flex nib. This is my favorite part. Go up and finish that third pass. So I don't know if you can pick it up from the video, but there is a definite difference in the level of blackness between each of those, which is to be expected. The samples down here with the flex, you know, it's obviously going to lay down the most ink, and it definitely looks the deepest, the darkest black there. But the ink, it works fine in all of those. I'll go ahead and do some more samples on copy paper. Alright, so I know how much you guys enjoy flex, so thought I'd give you a little close-up. Hopefully this turns out alright. So I did want to do a water test on this ink, and even though Organic Studio doesn't advertise it as being waterproof, I just wanted to see how it would hold up. Say you got caught in the rain, we got a quick shower. Let's just see how it works. All right, not too bad. The ink's running, and let's say we walk through a car wash. And what would happen then? Oh my! Actually, not that bad. The majority of the ink is still there. It's legible, and definitely check out the high-res scans. You will notice that the fine writing, where it doesn't lay down a lot of ink, did actually wash away, but the majority of it is still there. So